awareness felt like Plato's caveman, that I started seeing the shadows and I saw the wall, and for the very first time I climbed out to see that at least the light was coming from somewhere. I didn't know where it was coming from, because the state of consciousness I was living from was shaping all the choices that I did in my life automatically. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, where we start recognizing the persona, which is a mask that we develop when we're kids, or when we're growing from being kids to teenagers, in which we grow with a lot of different traumas. And it doesn't mean that those are intentional traumas. I didn't know who to pray to anymore. The structure I grew up with was built around guilt, and stepping outside of it felt like betrayal. I saw how self-centered I was and my inner world was, and everything had to work with me. I was the center of everything: my pain, my story, and my identity. It gives us at least the opportunity to step out of ourselves. Not everyone makes it through this stage, but for those that do, awareness is born.
3-1, hold short, runway 34.
Roger, hold short, runway 34.
Have you ever blamed your company, your job, your boss? Have you ever talked bad about someone, like a family member, a colleague, a partner, and felt right doing it? Have you ever blamed politics, money, the system, and you do it because of how you feel inside? Or have you ever told a story where you were clearly the victim? I have. And we do this every day by default. And most of the time, we don't even notice we're doing it. This episode is not about blaming ourselves, but it's about seeing something most of us live inside of without even noticing it. Victim consciousness. When we're in it, we blame, we point outside, we blame people, we blame situations, we blame the world. And the deeper the truth is, we often don't do it because we are evil. We do it because it feels safe. Victimism is addicting. It's addicting to point outside instead of taking full responsibility for the truth. Some of us know we're doing it and we feel guilty, and some of us, we don't know it at all. We're trapped inside a bubble that feels warm, familiar, and normal. And that's why this matters. Every one of us is living inside a state of consciousness, and most of the time, we don't even know it exists. And even when the awareness starts, we can be wrong on which one we're in. So this episode is the first shift that changes everything from why is this happening to me to, of course, this is happening given the state of consciousness we're living from. That shift isn't shame or self-attack, it's awareness. And awareness is where real power begins. Hi, my name is Mateo. I'm an airline pilot living in Asia and a lifelong seeker of self-development and wisdom. Welcome to Inner Navigation. Here, I take you with me through real shadow work and self-development as they happen in real life, not in theory, to reveal the internal mechanics behind our repeating loops and patterns. You'll hear my own process of transformation as it unfolds and the real tools that help me change from the inside out. This isn't about becoming someone new, but it's about remembering who you came here to be, your authentic, grounded, and abundant self. So let's dive in.
34, 0 degree 16 knots, runway 34, clear for takeoff.
Zero takeoff, runway 34.
After everything collapsed, as we talked about in the first episode, my life didn't restart right away. Actually, it froze. I went back to my family hometown, and I feel trapped inside a prison, not because the space was enclosed or restrictive. Actually, it was open, very big, quiet, very beautiful. But my life was suspended inside a legal process that wasn't moving at all. So we have the world shut down because of COVID at the beginning of 2020. And we had the legal process I was going through. And COVID didn't create a prison. It just amplified it. uncertainty stacked on top of uncertainty. And even if the world reopens, I didn't know if my future world would. So from the outside, it looked like rest, but from the inside, it felt like being trapped inside of my mind. So when our identity collapses, the ego panics, and instead of letting it die, it tried to keep it alive. I tried to live the same life that I had before. I had the same patterns, same going to parties, same going to nice restaurants, while I had to stay hidden. But I wasn't paying attention to the reality. The reality was trying to tell me, stop. Even though reality was clearly telling me that life is over, I was attached to who I had been before. And the more I tried to hold that identity together, the more I felt trapped inside of myself. I was trying to live again, feel again the same life that I was living before. So I don't let go from my identity. That's when the victim trance deepens, because when we start looking for someone or something to blame, in that case, I was blaming the system, I was blaming the lawyers, even blaming my family, even blaming God. We keep asking one question on repeat: why is this happening to me? The question feels innocent at the first, but it keeps us trapped inside ourselves, inside of our minds, and inside the same level or state of consciousness we are living at. Life slowly pushed me into solitude, not as a punishment, but as a necessity. I isolated myself from the very people who were trying to help me. And my family was there, but I couldn't receive them. Even though they were trying to help me every time, I used to call them and blame them if they're not doing something for me in the legal process. So I had to go into loneliness, not to escape, but because everything inside of me was cracking. This is the moment most of us recognize feeling alone, wanting to be alone, feeling disconnected from the world. And even when we are surrounded by people, we feel like that. That doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It means that you're inside or trapped inside your own mind, defending your old beliefs. This solitude is dangerous and sacred. It's where many fall into despair and depression. I did. I used to cry every single night, not knowing what the future was gonna be. I cried, shouted, asked God, why is this happening to me? I didn't know if I could continue anymore. And this is where some lost hope completely, because the old identity is dying and nothing new has formed yet. So at this stage, we don't understand that we are falling into emptiness and darkness, but we don't know that something great is about to come. So I prayed constantly, asking the same question, like, why is this happening to me? Hitting the wall of my mind over and over. But this is also the crack, the place where the shell finally breaks, where life gives us the opportunity, not guarantee, but it gives us at least the opportunity to step out of ourselves. Not everyone makes it through this stage, but for those they do, awareness is born.
100 meters, turn left onto B4, restore all navigation.
Check.
So this wasn't healing, not even close. It was the lowest point and the moment after hitting the bottom, when nothing makes sense anymore. But something subtle and irreversible happened. I stopped defending myself for a second. I started noticing myself. Imagine how hard in the night the sense of hopelessness was hitting my mind, that it cracked or triggered something that allowed me to see from the inside. And I started noticing those holes, the justifications, the loops that were happening. And I didn't understand them. I didn't know how to change them. I wasn't fixing anything. I was still living exactly in the same loops. I was repeating exactly the same, but I had a sense of awareness of what I was doing. For the very first time, I saw how self-centered I was and my inner world was. And everything had to work with me. I was the center of everything. My pain, my story, and my identity. And suddenly, I could see that from the outside. That wasn't healing. That was awareness, which is the first step up after touching the bottom. And remember my belief system and the religion I was born at. At that time, my idea of God collapsed. I didn't know who to pray to anymore. The structure I grew up with was built around guilt, and stepping outside of it felt like betrayal. I tried changing the words of praying. I tried renaming God using universe, uh, energy, consciousness, a lot of things. And the spiritual ideas mixed with my ego, confusion, and searching. So everything mixed inside of me. I didn't know who I was anymore. But that awareness felt like Plato's caveman, that I started seeing the shadows and I saw the wall. And for the very first time, I climbed out to see that at least the light was coming from somewhere. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't claim it was the truth, but I knew that my old belief was not the truth. And there was something else there. Once you see it, you cannot go back to think that the shadows and the wall are everything. So for the very first time, I saw something clearly. Life wasn't happening to me, but I was participating in it. Not because I was bad, but because the state of consciousness I was living from was shaping all the choices that I did in my life automatically.
Entries A500 developer 140, maintain speed to 50 knots or less.
That awareness felt like changing from why me to of course me. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, where we start recognizing the persona, which is a mask that we develop when we're kids or when we're growing from being kids to teenagers, in which we grow with a lot of different traumas. And it doesn't mean that those are intentional traumas, but we believe them as a trauma. And then we are so wounded and weak that we cannot go out to the world with that feeling, with that state. So we start creating the persona, the masks. So it will make us easier in life when we step out to the world. And at this stage that I was at, you don't understand the mask yet. You don't know why you build it. You don't even know what's underneath. You feel lost. You feel being disoriented, like who you were before doesn't work anymore. And that's not failure. That's awareness being reborn. We'll go deeper into the ego, identity, and masks in episode 7, and why we create personas, and what the ego actually is, and why it's not the enemy, and how new grounded identity is so important.
510, contact radar 133.A2.
There's a state of consciousness I lived in when I was a teenager and since my childhood. It sounds simple, but it runs very deep inside. It used to run very deep inside of me. One day it will change. One day something will happen. One day I'll live my life. One day. And this is not about dreaming or desire. Desire is sacred. Desire is the substance that builds reality. Desire is what runs all existence. This is about hope as waiting, hope that postpones life, hope that looks outside and says, not yet. What life was asking from me, it was not hope, it was certainty. Certainty beyond logic, not knowing what would happen and not needing to know, knowing this moment is exact, that it's perfectly designed by life, higher power, however you want to call it, but it's perfectly designed for my growth. That certainty doesn't wait for permission, it participates. The problem isn't hope, it's postponing life, waiting for something in the outside to change before we participate, waiting for a sign, a rescue, or a permission. I didn't see I was in victimhood. It felt normal. It felt like who I really was. As humans, we spend a lot of our lives defending our beliefs. We think we are our beliefs, our roles, our ego. We rarely step out of ourselves to question them. But life doesn't invite us just once. It's very constant. It invites us every day. Sometimes the invitation is small, and sometimes it's big. Sometimes it's a conversation, a reaction, just a small trigger, or sometimes it's a full collapse, a loss, a breakdown. The more we numb ourselves, the louder the invitation has to become. Not to punish us, but to wake us up. This doesn't happen all at once. There are layers to this. Seeing the truth once doesn't mean our state of consciousness has changed. Spirituality isn't about touching the divine and just escaping life. It's about integrating what we see into how we live every single day. And as long as we keep blaming the outside, politics, job, economics, other people, we stay inside the veil. We stay inside the trance. Stepping out is not a single moment. It's a series of daily decisions, momentarily decisions during our whole day. Every single moment, we decide or we choose not to react to the situation, not to point outside, not to blame the other because of what's happening to us, but we take full responsibility to be proactive on this is happening to me for growth and expansion. It's an opportunity to see and grow from the inside.
河北3312继续进近，雷达附中只联系塔台118.35的雁。
So I invite you to ask yourself right now, what state of consciousness am I living from? Who am I blaming most in my season of my life? Openly or quietly? Who do I feel owes me something? Recognition, love, fairness, an apology. What sentence do I repeat to myself when life feels unfair? You know, when I blame someone or speak about someone, I feel in my body an emptiness in my throat and my mouth start filling up with saliva. You know, the body knows. The body knows you're blaming and you want to do it for instant gratification because you cannot take responsibility of what is going on. It's a creation of yourself. And it's not because it's your fault. It's because it's a gift for you to open your eyes and step out of yourself.
Zero cancel altitude restriction is 3,000 meters on standard.
Cancel restriction is contained 3,000.
In that moment of blaming, that's a drain of energy, a discomfort I cannot ignore. And most of us know this feeling, you know, we've felt it many times, that subtle emptiness, that inner drain. But instead of listening to it, we learn to live with it. We look for thoughts to justify what we just said or did. Stories to reproduce responsibility. Stories that protect our self-image. That's how we stay inside the loop. Not because it's true, but because it's comfortable. You know, victim consciousness has its own comfort zone. And comfort can be addictive. That sensation is my signal, you know, that body sensation. Not guilt, not punishment, but it's just information. For you to check on it, when you blame, where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel tightness, emptiness, heat, numbness? What physical signs tell you you've stepped out of alignment? Write the sentences you're blaming from. I am noticing this thought, or I don't have it. Or say, I am noticing this thought, or I don't have to act from it. That is very helpful for starting to gain self-awareness. Victim consciousness doesn't just shape how we see life, it shapes how we react to it. And when we feel victims, we react emotionally, we defend, we justify. Those reactions repeat, they harden into patterns, and those patterns become loops. In episode 5, I will show you how this looked in my life, how I use my intelligence and sensitivity to control situations or others, how I could be sincere and still harm others. A sincere heart with unintegrated shadows, not as evil, but as unconscious reactivity dressed as my truth.
30, 20,